Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. You're very welcome to this new opening session from Chicago to welcome you to the World Law Congress in Colombia. So we're, as you know, we're presenting different topics, different discussions, different panels that are going to be celebrated in Colombia on December 2nd and 3rd. Today, we have a wonderful opportunity to go deeper in the legal education, in the future of the legal education. We need, if we want to have vanguardist buildings and nice cities, we need good architects. And if we want to have a good connection between the rule of law, their operators, like judges, lawyers, and the community, we need good law schools to promote good professionals that understand not just the law, but the spirit of the law. A constitution is a kind of civic education. It's not just a set of rules. And below the constitution, there are many different regulations, a whole system that looks for justice and human dignity. That's that should be behind any kind of legal education, and particularly in law schools. A certain level of legal education is needed in all different societies and in all different groups in societies. And all starts in law schools where good professors teach good lawyers, good judges, good public notaries, good legal operators, as I said before. So today I want to thank Professor Adams, who is in charge of the accreditation system of the American Bar Association. He has put together a very nice panel today with Boyce from Syracuse University, here Osofsky from the Dean of the Penn State Law School, Kellye Testy, also from the USA, and Judith Areen. So I hope we have a very good opportunity. I just want to recall that this opening session is going to be live now in YouTube, and it's going to be in YouTube for a couple of years. So you can start now the conversation and the journey to Colombia. And please try to be in Madrid July 4th and July 5th. July 5th and July 6th. We're going to have the final journey of these opening sessions with a strong opportunity to discuss with the 6 chairmen of the international courts, chairman of the International Criminal Court, the chairman of the International Court of Justice from The Hague, the chairwoman of the Inter-American Court for Human Rights, the chairman of the European Supreme Court, European Court of Justice in Luxembourg, the chairman of the European Court of Human Rights, and the chairwoman of the African Court of Human Rights. They're going to have the last opening sessions, together with a tribute to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Justice Ginsburg. As you know, last public event of Ruth Bader Ginsburg was precisely to receive the World Peace and Liberty Award from the World Jurist Association in Washington in February last year. And we are celebrating her life through recognition of number 8 magnificent women that leads the world in the rule of law in different countries. So we're going to have, for example, Christine Lagarde from France, who is now the president of the European Central Bank, or the president of the Supreme Court of South Africa. So women from India, South Korea, Europe, and America are going to be in Madrid, together with the Spanish King, together with the President of Colombia, together with the Ministers of Justice, and approximately 40 Supreme Court Chief Justices. I hope you can join. It's going to be an only by invitation event, and please be part of this community as speakers of this session, and also as members of the World Jurist Associations. So thank you very much, Bill. Now we will hear President Duque's message for the audience, and then Bill will chair the session and will lead the discussion. Thank you very much.
I am very pleased to welcome you to the beginning of the 27th edition of the World Law Congress. More than 14 opening sessions that will conclude in our cherished Cartagena de Indias next year. It is an honor for our Colombians to host for the first time an edition of this true celebration of democracy. We received this designation as a recognition of our efforts in defending the rule of law as a guarantor of freedom, order, peace, and concord in our society, precisely when we celebrate the 30th anniversary of the 1991 Constitution, as well as the bicentenary of the promulgation of the Constitution of Cucuta. The world is facing challenging times for many reasons, including the COVID-19 pandemic and its huge socioeconomic consequences. So we must strive to amplify valuable dialogues, such as those promoted by the World Jurist Association, the World Law Foundation, and other sponsors of this very important Congress. That is why I salute the design of this innovative, ongoing format that will hold these online opening sessions with free access. It will be a great opportunity to promote the strengthening of the rule of law as the fertile soil to allow the growth of well-being, development, and freedom for our citizens. I invite the international legal community to participate actively in this democratic journey, which will be held throughout the next months in top cities like Washington, Miami, Mexico City, Buenos Aires, Hong Kong, and other cities around the globe. I wish you the very best during these months of knowledgeable building and sincerely welcome you to our country, when we will continue to work to build a better legal system and a better future for all based on the rule of law. Thank you so much.
Thank you and welcome to all the participants. I thank the World Jurist Association and the World Peace Foundation for World Law Foundation, excuse me, for inviting us to talk about the future of legal education in the United States. And so we have a distinguished panel today to talk about legal education in the United States. But first, we are honored to have a representative from a prominent European law school talk to us today. And so without further ado, I want to turn it over to that representative and thank her for appearing with us today.
Good morning or good evening, depending on where you are now. I'm now reading a text which I wrote for you. My English is a bit rusty, so I ask for a bit of patience and literal understanding. It is an honor to be a part of this event, the relevance and prestige of which is well known, and to do so also among such relevant jurists. My humble role here today is to frame in a very generic way what are, in my opinion, the challenge we face and how we are tackling the future of legal education at UNIR. UNIR is characterized by a continuous innovation and, in the words of our dean, to act under the firm commitment to meet our social function of transmitting knowledge through great education and research. The other noticeable characteristic of UNIR is having embraced since its creation the challenge of a 100% online education, which other institutions had to join as a consequence of COVID. Education is in any area of knowledge must attend to the needs brought by society. This goal takes, if possible, even more relevance in a legal arena, given the crucial role that law has a tool for social transformation. Thus, the goal of both the academic community and all institutions with a significant role in the education and specialization of jurists is necessarily tied to the observation of the social, political, and economic reality that we live in, and not in any one particular nation, but in a globalized world. From my experience as a lawyer and educator, I would point to the global vision of law and the necessary attention it brings onto social matters from its different perspectives. As one of the essential aspects, we should set the trend for a future law education. Of course, both must be addressed from a practical point of view, present all the time. There is no doubt that in current times, transnational operations are gathering more relevance, and the legislative progress that is made in the different legal orders bring much higher social impact. For this reason, future jurists must always be aware of their respective national legal environments, but also to what is happening in others. Educators must make sure that students learn how to use the tools available to develop a true global vision. The evolution of the ways in which we interact, as well as the meaningful and unstopped progress of technology and its implication on the legal domain, firmly set the future of law education, which will be more and more practical and will have a more dynamic and innovative profile as the only way to respond to the demands and concerns of the generation developing and operating in a globalized world. I believe that meetings like this, in which such essential matters are addressed from a plural and international perspective, are a keystone to the construction of the true future of law. The exchange of opinion and the enrichment of as participants guarantee the law education continues to evolve and is showed tightly tied to the social, political, and economical reality. In my opinion, we fulfill our obligation when we suggest new methods and plural solutions, understanding innovation as an essential tool in the construction of present and future law education. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. And as I said, today's panel will be talking about the future of legal education in the United States. And I feel honored and privileged to have a distinguished group of people to talk to us about that today. And I apologize to them up front if I talked about all the various appointments and accomplishments of this distinguished group. I'd take the entire hour. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to give you their current positions and most recent positions, and we'll start the dialogue after that. So first we have Kellye Testy, who's the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Law School Admission Council. She'll describe for you what the Law School Admission Council does and be talking to us today about law school enrollment trends and other things. Kellye, in addition to her current position, has been a dean in the past. She was the dean of the University of Washington School of Law and the Seattle University School of Law. So we're very fortunate to have Kellye join us. Next will be Judith Areen, who is the Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer of the Association of American Law Schools, whose mission is to uphold and advance excellence in legal education. As I indicated, it is a membership organization, but the last I checked, I believe they have 160 ABA approved law school members and 17 fee paid law schools. And since there are 197 ABA-approved law schools. You can see that the association really does include virtually or almost all of our ABA-approved law schools. In addition to her current position, Judith has also been a dean at a law school. She was the dean of the Georgetown University Law Center and executive vice president for law affairs at Georgetown University for several years. Next, we'll have Hari Osofsky, who's presently the dean of Penn State Law School and the Penn State School of International Affairs. And Hari has just been named very recently to be the next dean of the Northwestern Pritzker School of Law. So we're very fortunate to have her. She's involved with many projects that I want to talk about, some of them today. And finally, we'll have Craig Boyce, who is the dean and professor of law at Syracuse University College of Law and is also a former dean of the Cleveland State University Cleveland Marshall College of Law. And I should have explained myself as the managing director of the American Bar Association section of legal education. The section is the United States Department of Education's recognized accreditor of law schools for their JD programs, but the actual accreditation decisions are made by our council of the section, and that council includes law deans, judges, public members, and law faculty. And Craig is one of our council members, so he's on the governing council for accreditation and has a lot, I think, of important insights that we'll be interested in sharing. So without further ado, I want to start talking to our panel, and I'll start with Kellye, and I'm going to ask her to describe what the Law School Admission Council does. To many people, you know, it's recognized as the entity that delivers the law school admission tests, but the LSAC does a lot of other things as well. And I also wanted to talk about enrollment trends in the Great Recession, the one that preceded this pandemic recession. Law school applications dropped dramatically in the United States, and I wanted to talk about trends since then and what she sees in the next year and the future. So without further ado, Kellye, will you describe a little bit about LSAC and talk to us about enrollment trends in the United States?
Thank you, Bill. I'm honored to do so, and I very much appreciate this invitation today from the World Law Foundation and the World Jurist Association. It's an honor to be with all of you. I want to start, as Bill invited, by explaining a little bit about what the Law School Admission Council, or LSAC, is and what it does. And it's an honor for me to serve as its president after having been a law school dean for around 15 years. LSAC was formed almost 75 years ago by deans of law schools in the United States in order to promote more fairness and equity in law school admission. And that remains our mission. The very core of what we're about is doing everything we can to promote an ethical and fair and transparent admission system for legal education in the United States. We also work in many countries around the world as well, and India, Canada, Australia, Bhutan, increasingly in Chile, and in many other places. But I'm going to leave that aside a little bit to talk a little bit more about trends we're seeing in the US today, and also a little bit about the range of services that we do provide. So let me start by letting you know that we serve both law schools and candidates. And the way that we do that is that we have member law schools that are the ABA accredited law schools. And there are also a number of unaccredited law schools that contract with us for various services in admission and enrollment. But our member schools are part of our governance structure and also help lead our board of governors, our trustees, and also staff many committees that we work with. Our organization has around 350 employees, and the primary lines of service that we provide to legal education are, first, that we provide the technology without cost to all of our law schools so that they can do their enrollment processes. And that technology is a very sophisticated and unique piece of software for legal education that helps the schools do outreach to candidates and process the enrollment applications that they receive. On the candidate side, we also provide a helpful technology in that we make it possible for candidates to apply through us and just have to apply one time, and then we send their application out to all the law schools that they wish to apply to, thereby saving them a lot of money and time and effort in duplicating that work. And that also helps the schools because it is difficult to verify all the transcripts, whether coming from the US or an international institution. And we do all that so that that's done. We also help norm GPAs, so it's easier to compare candidates across very different institutions. As Bill noted, one of the products we're best known for is the law school admission test, or the LSAT. And that gives vital information both to schools and to candidates because it's the most predictive factor in how one will do, especially in the first year of law school, but actually on through law school. And it adds something like 60% to the prediction of that success, which is vital information we think fair for a candidate to have as they start their journey, and also, of course, very helpful to schools as they want their students and to be able to thrive once they're in law school. That test, the LSAT, is now the most highly regarded test of critical thinking around the world. It's been an enormously stable assessment tool, and one that is so stable because it's very fundamental. It tests the three most important skills for legal education. That's writing skill, analysis skill, and reading comprehension skill. And those three are just so critical for any legal studies. Let me also note that we serve the pre-law community, and we are cheerleaders for legal ed. We help generate demand for legal education as a whole, and we reach out broadly to build pipeline programs and help candidates find their way through the process of applying to law school and enrolling successfully. And that work is some of what I most treasure, which is helping, as our opening speaker said, people understand how vital the rule of law is to peace and justice, and why we need a constant stream of wonderfully talented and diverse individuals pursuing law school. Bill noted that after the Great Recession, legal education in the United States really had a decline in enrollment. I think that was a perfect storm of a number of factors. Since that time, it has started to rebound and gradually tick back up, not to the levels we saw in 2009-10 time, but certainly on the increase, which we're pleased about because, again, we need robust demand for the future of justice. And as an example, last year during the pandemic, LSAC was able to pivot very quickly and offer the LSAT remotely so that candidates could continue their enrollment journey. And when the pandemic struck, volume for applicants in the US were looking a little lower than the prior year. But once we were able to make that pivot and allow those candidates to go ahead and pursue their legal education, volume for that cycle did come up and actually exceeded the prior year. And then for this year, for this cycle, we're seeing a very large increase in volume to the tune of around 20%. And that is something that we're very pleased to see. And I think our schools are also weighing right now how to balance that with the numbers of students that they enroll. Enrollment in US law schools has been fairly flat at around 38,000 for a few years and so trying to calibrate the number of students that are enrolled to job markets is obviously a very important consideration in enrollment. Just to give you a sense of the numbers, for JD applicants in 2020, there were 57,000 applicants in the US. This year, there are 67,000. And that is the number of people applying. They are submitting multiple applications. Usually candidates apply on average to around 7 or so law schools. It dips and comes back up year to year. But this year we see that there are 467,000 applications compared to 355,000 applications the prior year. So a fairly big surge this year. We attribute that to a number of things, including the heightened awareness in the US of the need to take care of law and justice and to work vigorously to defend law and democracy. And we also know that our ability to help those enrollment journeys really continue without any disruption has helped that volume flow as well, as has the outreach in the pre-law and pipeline building work that we do. Bill, I'm going to stop there for now, and I'd be glad to talk a little bit more as we go on about enrollment of LLM or some of the other things that LSCC does to help nurture a very healthy ecosystem for admission in the United States. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Kellye. And I will probably be back to talk to you about those other degrees and programs in addition to the JD, since a lot of international students are interested in them. So next we have Judith Areen, who, like I said, is the is with the Association of American Law Schools, which provides a wide range of services to law schools, and as I said, covers virtually all of our ABA approved law schools. So I would like for her to highlight what she thinks the attendees would be interested in, and also ask her to talk about, because as I think everyone understands, the pandemic presented many, many challenges to law schools as well as the rest of society. And I think the AALS was really helpful this year in helping schools navigate how to proceed in the face of these challenges. So with that, I'll turn it over to Judith to let her fill you in on what the AALS does and what it particularly did this year to help schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And let me extend my thanks to the World Jurist Association for letting us be part of this 2021 World Law Conference. As Bill has already indicated, we pretty much overlap in membership with ABA accredited law schools. At this point, we have 176 member law schools, another 17 who are fee paid, for a grand total of 193 compared to your 197. So if you add it all up, our members enroll most of the nation's law students and produce the majority of our lawyers and judges. Our mission is to uphold and enhance excellence in legal education. And to do that, we focus on what we call core values. So they include excellence in teaching and scholarship, academic freedom, and diversity, including both diversity of backgrounds and diversity of viewpoints. While seeking to improve the legal profession, to foster justice and the rule of law, and to serve our many local communities, national and international. We have a dual responsibility, which isn't clear for our name, but I want to underscore. From our name, we're an association of law schools, and we have those 193 law schools, part of our organization, but we are also the learned society for all law faculty in the United States. So that's more than 10,000 individual law professors and administrators. We provide for them lots of professional and development opportunities, including our annual meeting, which in most years has 2,300, 2,400 law professors in attendance. But this past January, when we did our first ever virtual meeting, we had a total of more than 5,000 law professors attend that session. Throughout the year, we divide our membership into sections depending on their area of expertise. So we have a section on tort law, a section on contract law, a section on international law, and so forth. And those sections put together programs for the annual meeting, and in addition, set up programs during the year. And during this pandemic year, it's been especially important with people feeling isolated, often working from home, to be able to connect with other law faculty in their area of expertise. We also serve as a voice on behalf of legal education. And I encourage any of you to look at our website at AALS.org. And you'll see that we weekly add up news stories and blog posts on anything involving legal education. We also list the symposia, and most of them have been virtual this year, held by member law schools, books written by law professors, and on social media, we both repost and retweet articles and information from our member law faculty and law schools. Fifth, we have been increasingly involved in doing research of importance to legal education. So 2 years ago, it meant a report on Before the JD, and we reached out and surveyed more than 21,000 college undergraduates to ask them whether they were thinking about going on to graduate school. And from that, learned about the primary reasons college students were interested in going to law school. And I think it very much fits in with Dean Kellye's assessment of why we've had this increase the last 2 years in interest in legal education. And I would sum it up by saying they were very public spirited in their answers. There was a sense of wanting to make things better, to support the rule of law. And in that interest in service to others, I think is an explanation for why we're seeing this increase in the number of students going on to law school. At the moment, we have underway a new research project that's looking at all of the American law school deans. And we're asking questions about what led to their decision to put their hat in. Why did they want to be a leader? What did they find of interest, of what helped them most in their preparation for being an effective law school dean? And what are some of the biggest challenges they've faced both before the pandemic and now as we're beginning to emerge? Bill asked me to say a word about what's happening during this pandemic year. And I'd mention 2 things that I think might be of general interest. The first is Dean Testy and I got together in March of 2020, so more than a year ago, and started weekly Zoom sessions and invited all of the deans. And we, for those first months, would typically have 140 or 150 of the law school deans online, talking with each other. We had, as invited guests, sometimes a university or college president, but it was mostly law school deans on the challenges everyone was facing. For many law schools, it meant we basically had a week, in some cases, only a weekend, to put our entire education program online. And there were no experts in the country on how to do this. And there were special problems that arose for law schools because we had to be sure we were in compliance with the rules of the ABA and of the various state jurisdictions for admission to the bar. So those sessions showed how the community coming together can make such a difference during a difficult time. The second thing we did was to put together a conference, and the planning didn't start until January. Our annual meeting occurred during the events of January 6th. And again, deans came together and said, what can we do to strengthen the rule of law in the United States? And so we came up with a conference that based itself primarily on a recent book that I want to highly recommend. It's called After Trump, Reconstructing the Presidency. And the authors are Bob Bauer and Jack Goldsmith, one a Democrat, one a Republican, both with experience in the federal government. Bob Bauer was White House counsel to President Obama. Jack Goldsmith was head of the Office of Legal Counsel in the Department of Justice during the Bush administration. And their book has a series, more than 50, specific suggestions of statutes and regulations that should be adopted to prevent some of the controversies we've faced over the past period of years. And so, for example, rather than have it ambiguous or simply a matter of tradition, there ought to be a law that requires major party candidates to disclose their tax returns and their business interests, so that as people in this democracy make their choice about future leaders, they will have complete information. So in May, we put together a conference called Rebuilding Democracy and the Rule of Law that spent a day focused on improving the presidency and the next day focused on elections. I mentioned it to you. It's on our website, AALS.org. You can go and take a look and listen to panels of interest on topics. And we're feeling very pleased to see how people turned out for it. I've never put together an academic conference where virtually everyone asked to speak said yes. And at the end of it said they were honored to be part of the conference because we were using our academic knowledge and ability to think of new solutions for the good of the country. And so it makes it a very exciting time for me to be part of AALS and to be here with you. And I thank you, Bill, for the invitation.
Thank you, Judy. And I do want to thank Judy and Kellye. I think those calls with the deans when everyone was trying to figure out how to move from a residential program to doing completely online were vital for all the deans and the schools as they helped each other. And I congratulate the schools that they really did work on helping each other figure out how are we going to switch all our courses at the drop of a hat. And many thanks to Judy and Kellye for doing that. And I also want to commend Judy. They do many conferences of value, but this one on rebuilding democracy is one that's very timely for the United States. And I do think that probably with this organization would be of interest to people as well. So thanks again, Judy, for joining us today. And next I'm going to turn to Dino Sasky. And the part of the reason I asked her, in addition to her being a leader in legal education, is there has been emerging discussions about whether law schools are properly training people on issues of technology as technology increasingly gets used in the practice of law, and certainly was more used during the pandemic. So I'm going to ask Dino Sasky if she'll talk to us a little bit about, she's been working with a group of deans really interested in those issues of technology. And I'm going to ask her if she'll talk to us about what they've been doing and where she sees maybe legal education going in the United States, or where it should go in regarding to training future lawyers about the use of technology. So with that, Dino Sasky, I welcome your comments.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be with this group and want to add to the praise for the wonderful sessions that Kellye and Judy put together. I think it's been, you know, we look for the sort of silver linings and things that we want to keep out of the layered crises of this past year. And I think the heightened collaboration among deans has really been one of them. And that's in many ways the theme that I've been asked to talk about. So I became a dean a few years ago because I think that we're at a moment of profound change in which technology and globalization and the need for cross-cutting knowledge and the need for meaningful progress on diversity, equity, and inclusion are changing the practice of law, who needs legal services and information, and really what the shape of our profession will look like moving forward. And law schools, I think, have been really struggling with what that means for legal education. And so, so when I became a dean, I started to work in my own institution to think about how we might do this in developing a legal tech virtual lab and training our students and beginning to partner with tech companies. But as I did that, I realized that I really didn't want to reinvent wheels separately, and that there were so many deans doing interesting work that I could learn from. And so I started a little over 3 years ago, a monthly meeting of deans that then as it evolved, it now every other month includes tech leaders at our schools, to begin to think about how we can learn from each other in the tech and innovation space and really think about the future of legal education and the future of the profession. That over the last few years, it's taken a variety of forms, a lot of information sharing about different ways we're using technology, different programs we're developing. But when the pandemic hit, this group has really been, as in some ways, building off of the greater collaborative spirit that's been happening among the deans more broadly. And at this point, close to half of the deans in the country are part of this group. And so what we began to do over the course of this year was really think about how we could learn together and work together in a variety of ways. So this spring, for example, we spent sort of a sustained few hours thinking about, this group has always been about how do we share new knowledge? And the question that we were answering together was, what are the best tech discoveries we made this year that we would like to keep learning after the pandemic? We also began to think about whether there were new ways we could share courses. And Bill will be glad to know that we framed the question as, how might we share courses under existing ABA rules to help give opportunities for our students? But we also, began to think about, there's also conversation about sort of rules around distance education that currently exist and what that means as we move forward. And then we also were thinking about partnership and partnering with legal organizations and tech companies, and thinking about where are the opportunities for us to build new partnerships across law schools and with partner organizations. And intertwined with that is a sense that has been coming through in a number of the remarks of the crucial need that we have in our society for greater justice and greater access to justice. And one of the complexities of thinking about sort of justice and access to justice in the context of technology is that on the one hand, emerging technology may provide us with tools to provide people with greater access to legal services. On the other hand, there's a technology gap. The very poorest people in our society often don't have full access to technology. And so, we have to think really creatively, I think, about how we can use technology to advance justice. So I'm really excited about those partnerships as well. And then the other thing we've also been doing is just like thinking about planning, right? So there was a discussion about the pivot that all of these laws we've all had to make, right? And it was a series of pivots, right? So it was first on very short notice, all the law schools in the country went to remote learning as the country shut down. Then as things opened up a little more, many law schools began to move to a more hybrid format. And in many ways, one of the pieces of feedback I've been hearing from deans is that the hybrid format is harder than a pure remote or a pure in-person format, right? How do you integrate a mix of remote and residential students? And then, of course, I think most law schools are hoping to be in a more normal status this fall, but maybe not fully normal. And so part of what we've also tried to do is just share resources of, how are we proctoring exams as we've pivoted to remote? Or, what are ways, we're on Zoom right now and I had a comment from one of the deans participating who said that, so we've been using Zoom throughout, that everybody's gotten much more comfortable with Zoom. I think back to my first year as dean when we were hosting the SALT teaching conference and the AALS technology section conference, and I had to actually demo for people Zoom to prove to them that we could do simultaneous sessions on Zoom. I don't think I would have to do that demo anymore, but we thought about like platforms that are more interactive than Zoom and other sorts of things. We've also shared information on how we're doing technology training in our law schools and where we see innovative trends and technologies. And so, you know, I guess I don't want to take up too much more time, and so I just want to end by saying that I think, you know, as we begin to envision how we learn from the last year, and I think in order to succeed as a profession and as law schools, we have to learn. That one of the big pieces of learning is not only the value of this wonderful collaboration, but also that there is going to be a demand for I think some of the flexibilities that we've experienced during this pandemic, right? Not just online education, but sort of a hyper flexibility about education. And as we begin to think about what that means for legal education and what that means within sort of the structure of how we do it now, I think there are a lot of opportunities for us to learn from one another and think about how we approach the different kinds of programs we have in our law schools, from the JD to the LLM to the master's degrees. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. And next I want to turn to Dean Boyce, who is here in part because, as I said, he's on the governing council for our accreditation section. So in some ways, he has more to do with the future of legal education than any of the rest of us. But I particularly ask him because of his innovative online program for JD students. The American Bar Association has long had limits on the provision of legal education through distance technology. And so we used to have very restrictive limits on it. And right before the pandemic, we increased them a little so that 10 credits in the first year can be now provided through distance learning technology and a third towards the degree. However, the council has permitted approximately half a dozen law schools to do experimental programs that go beyond our credit limits. And we are looking with interest at how students perform in those programs, and we'll be looking at that performance to determine whether we should further provide more options for schools to provide additional distance education. So I'm asking Dean Boyce today to talk to us about his innovative interactive program and what his observations upon the experience that the school has had with the students and how he thinks it's going, and whether he thinks this is something that should be done more as we move forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to the Dean. Thank you, Dean Boyce.
Thank you so much, Bill. And thank you and the World Jurist Association, as well as the World Law Foundation, for the opportunity to speak about this today. It's an honor to be here with this group, particularly my co-panelists, who I know and respect. So, as Bill said, online legal education in the U.S. has been fairly limited historically. When I became dean at Syracuse in 2016, we began to consider developing a hybrid online legal program. We felt that there was a market for this because in the US, most people who pursue law school do so directly out of college or with maybe a year or two of work experience. For people who are a decade or so further along in their lives, who perhaps have families, established homes, have jobs, the option to be able to go back and obtain a law degree, the options were pretty limited. You might have to move because to where there is actually a law school. There are only a little under 200 in the country. So you might be far away from a law school. You might have to quit your job. You might have to borrow money to pay for your tuition, as well as to support yourself, provide your own living expenses during the course of pursuing that law degree. So we thought that a hybrid online program with greater flexibility would be something that would be appealing to a pretty significant number of people. At the time, there was only one other online program that had been approved for variance by the ABA, and that was a program that was a combination of some in-person instruction at that law school, as well as a set of asynchronous courses. Asynchronous meaning self-guided courses. The components of our program were going to be threefold. First, we plan to use a live video classroom limited to 20 or so students. Now, after a year and a half of Zoom, that doesn't sound terribly cutting edge, but you have to understand at the time, nobody was doing it. There was no other program using a live Zoom classroom. So that was one component. The second one was an asynchronous self-guided component with courses that were built, they were filmed actually. So faculty members actually filmed these courses. They have some lecture components. They also have animations. They have short answer questions, essay, multiple choice questions, reinforcing the material, and those portions of the program are self-guided. And then the third component of the program was 2 week-long residencies on our campus each year. And so after a couple of false starts, it took some time to get the ABA to grant us the variance for this program. So we admitted our first students in January of 2019. We were limited under the variance's terms to 65 students. Our first cohort was a little over 30 students in January. That August, we had an additional cohort of about 50 students. And today we've gotten permission from the ABA to expand our enrollment to 100. So for this fall, we expect to have 100 students in the program. Program runs year round. It takes 10 semesters or about 3 1/3 years to complete. We thought there would be demand for this, but we just underestimated how much demand. We really are only able to enroll about 12% of applicants to the program, and this year applications are up over 100%. The students that are in the program come from around the country and around the world, and they come from all different occupations and backgrounds. On average, students in the program are 11 years older than our residential JD students. They have a 2-point higher median LSAT score than our residential students, roughly the same GPA. And they're business people. They're medical doctors, nurses, law enforcement, military connected. We've had emergency room physicians, head of thoracic surgery at one hospital. We've had a brigadier general in the program. And they're an interesting group, a very active group. Faculty love to teach them because they're not afraid to speak up. They've been in the world. They have questions. They keep our faculty on their toes and require them to bring their A game. They're also very active in student organizations, remotely, of course, but they can be involved in law review as well as our moot court program. In fact, this last year in particular, the students in the JDI program sort of dominated in the moot court space. We expect that students in the JDI program will make up 40% of our total student body within the next year. In building this program, we built dozens of online courses. And from that set of courses, we've realized some additional side benefits. That includes being able to use those courses in other ways. So for example, students who may go for a semester to do an externship in DC can take online courses while they're doing that. We introduced a 3rd-year away program, which allows students to commit to just 2 years of being in residence at Syracuse and finishing their 3rd year of law school through a combination of externship and online courses. And finally, we've created the first and still only hybrid online JD MBA program in the country. We were familiar enough with online by the time the pandemic hit that we actually were able to help faculty at other law schools. Our faculty were very much involved in a variety of different trainings for other law school faculty. And now we're seeing applicants to our residential JD program begin to reconsider and think about the online program as as an attractive option for a few reasons. One, they can continue to build the work experience, the current jobs that they have. They can support themselves during the course of their law school education. They can avoid moving. And sometimes their tuition might be paid fully or partially by their employers. So I think that what we're seeing is a trend where MBA, this kind of program is going in a similar direction to what's happened with MBA programs in the US, which has been a migration away from residential to online Masters of Business Administration programs. So I'll stop there, but I will say I don't think that we've seen the end of the impact that distance education will have in legal education. While nearly half of college students have taken at least one online course, and roughly 15% of college students are fully online right now, I think there still is room for us to expand this in the area of legal education. I'll stop there, Bill.
Thank you, Dean Boyce. And I want to thank all the panelists again today who provided, I think, really interesting information about where legal education is in the United States and where we seem to be heading. I also want to thank again the World Jurist Association and the World Law Foundation. And I congratulate you on your work towards promoting the rule of law. I think in the United States, we had taken for granted for a long time that we all accepted the rule of law and what it meant. But we've been humbled in the past couple of years in finding out that maybe not everyone in our society fully appreciates that. And as has been covered by some of the people here today, this group has been involved in really re-energizing US law schools to engage in making sure that their students understood the importance of this and the importance that we provide information and education to society at large about the rule of law and its importance as we go forward. So with that, I'm going to close today and thank everyone again for attending and thanking all the attendees and wish you all the best of luck going forward. Thanks, everybody.